And we're live. Look at that. I even lost myself. I was just staring off into space for a moment. But thank you for joining us again on Cache Canada Chats. I'm London Westy, and this is Cache Canada. And we have a number of people in the room already, and we'd like to welcome them aboard because you're coming to us for an update on Cache Tour with respect to Adventure Labs. DougyB will be joining us and explaining the update that he has because there are some things that have changed. And if you have been watching some of our previous videos on Cache Tour, some of the items that we might have been telling you might not work right now or don't work at all or have changed. But DougyB is going to explain all that because he is the Cache Tour man. So before we get to that, let's just bring in this little advertisement I created a while ago, and I really need to redo this one. But it is all about Cache Tour, and we want to give our friends there at Cache Tour a shout out. Wherever you want to go geocaching, let Cache Tour take you there. Ooh, it all sounds so ominous. Welcome, DougyB. You're back.
I am. Thank you
And
for having me.
And there's your front, too. Yeah, and no Leafs game tonight, although you're wearing the red Leaf. I'm wearing the black Leaf.
No Leafs game tonight. I am actually wearing a Toronto Blue Jays hat tonight.
Oh, that's a
this
Blue
is
Jays hat.
It is on Canada Day. The Blue Jays wear red
Ah,
and with a big maple leaf. And I happened to be down there one year on Canada Day, so
that
picked
looks
one
like
up.
mine. There you go.
I'm also going to give a shout out to Sweating to the Oldies.
Mm-hmm.
Our friend Sweat31, Eric, who runs the Sweating to the Oldies group. So if you're watching, Eric, love the hoodie.
Yeah, Eric, I need a new shirt. Mine's too old now to wear. It is so comfy. So very comfortable. We want to welcome our guests so far. We have Wet Coaster, Just Finding Our Way, Remen, Kathy Laurie, Carol Burnett, Carol Barant, and of course, Dougie's with us. And what are we going to be talking about today?
We are going to be talking about Cache Tour and Adventure Labs and some updates to some of the things that we've talked about in the past. Now, just before we launched the stream, you and I were chatting, and it's been 2 years since we started the Chats with DougyB series. 2 years, yeah.
Holy doodle!
Yeah, and in those 2 years, a couple of things. One, I think we did 3 or 4 videos related to Cache Tour and Lab to GPX and Adventure Labs, and those videos have been really well received. There's been lots of people from all over the world who've been watching those videos, who've been commenting, who've been asking questions, and have been learning how to do trip planning for Adventure Labs and for anything really geocaching related for Cache Tour. But a couple of things have changed in the last 6 months or so.
Yep.
So today we're going to talk about a few of those things. Some of the things that have changed are related to Lab to GPX, so we'll touch briefly on that so that people are aware. And there's been a new capability added to Cache Tour, which makes adding Adventure Labs to a trip plan so much easier.
Oh,
but with a couple of caveats. Yeah. So we'll get to that. We'll walk through it today on how to do a trip plan in Cache Tour and add some Adventure Lab locations, all from within Cache Tour. So what we're
Nice.
going to be doing tonight in the demo, you don't need to go to Lab to GPX. You don't need to go to Google Maps. You don't need to open up your Adventure
Hmm.
Lab app. You'll be able to do this all from within cachetur.
Wow.
Um, and then we'll talk about a couple of those limits so that you know when you need to step outside cachetur to get a few things.
Hmm. Okay, so we're going to dive into that shortly, but we have three trackables I'm going to give away tonight. I'll figure out how we're going to do that. But I've got just a lackey kind of. I think this one might have been from Cache Shadow. I have a few of these, so I'm going to give one away because I don't need them all. And I'm going to give away one of our original Cache Canada trackable tags. We still have a few left. It was the very first ones that we ever had made. And I'm going to give away one of our new Cache Canada trackable tags. And these were made by Compass Creek, and they did a great job. And this, of course, is the winning entry that we had for a design that we wanted somebody else to help us make one. And this is a beautiful, beautiful design. And of course, that person will be getting their very own, plus an old one of ours and a Cache Canada geocoin when it's ready. So there you go. Shall we dive right in? We've got a few more guests have joined us, so let's carry on.
Excellent. So let's start with a couple of things that have changed since we did those first series of videos 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So when we first started talking about Adventure Labs in cachetur, the very first way that I described for everyone how to get their coordinates for each location of an Adventure Lab was, by comparison today, quite cumbersome. It
Mm-hmm.
required going into the application and taking a look in the map as to where those locations were, and then going to Google Maps and sort of estimating in Google Maps where they were and grabbing the coordinate, and
Yep.
then manually adding that coordinate and other information into cachetur. At the time, that was really about the only way to do it. It worked. It was very, very time consuming. We then created a subsequent video when Lab to GPX came out, which is another website, another tool that everybody can use
Mm-hmm.
that simplified that. You could put in a set of
Mm-hmm.
coordinates, and from that coordinates, Lab to GPX would grab all of the adventure labs in a certain radius that you could define, and it would pull all those down either into a text file that you could import into cachetur or into a GPX file that you could use any number of ways, including
Mm-hmm.
in GSAC.
Yep.
And that
I
was
remember that.
fantastic.
It
Um,
was. I loved it.
yeah. And so many people started using that. And I know, Dave, you've used it to plan trips. You know that I did a significant trip like you last year to the West Coast. I spent 3 weeks driving out to the West Coast and back and did the entire trip using Lab to GPX and cachetur.
Mm-hmm.
And it was amazing. I had a trip planned for every day. I had my adventure labs sorted out. I had all of my stops sorted out, virtuals and webcams and everything that I needed to do, hotels. It was all in cachetur. So we love cachetur. Um, but one of the things that's changed from Lab to GPX is that, and this may or may not impact everyone, but in the past, you used to be able to optionally have Lab to GPX tell you about journal entries. And journal entries, of course, are often used in adventure labs to give you the clues to where a final mystery bonus cache might be.
Mm-hmm.
And for some people, including me, when I was planning large trips, that was an important thing, right? Um, but that's no longer available in Lab to GPX. So that's just one of the things that I want to highlight as something that you can't do in Lab to GPX anymore. You can't do it with cachetur either. So we're not going to be able to show you a way today to get those journal entries, right?
Yep.
That capability is no longer there,
Hmm.
right? But Lab to GPX was fantastic. But one of the challenges with Lab to GPX was when you went to grab an adventure lab, it would grab everything in the radius that you defined.
Right.
So if you put your if you put your coordinates in the center of, say, Colby, Kansas, and if you don't know about Colby, Kansas, look it up on the Adventure Lab map. It's near Mingo.
Yep.
It's just northwest of Mingo. And there's a whole bunch of adventure labs that were put out there last year, right in Colby, Kansas. So if you were to put your coordinates in lab to GPX right in the center of Colby, Kansas, and say give it a 10-mile radius, then when you pulled that information out of lab to GPX, you would get every single adventure lab around Colby, Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
If that's what you wanted, that's fine. But if you only wanted one adventure lab, you now had to trim that output. You had to cut and paste or edit or delete. So there was extra steps involved to get the adventure labs that you wanted from that output. So it's not terribly cumbersome, but it was extra steps. Now, I want everybody to understand, I'm not saying don't use lab to GPX. Far from it. Please go back and look at the videos that we did on using lab to GPX. Everything that we said in there is still very valid, with the exception of the journal entry component, which has been removed.
Mm-hmm.
But lab to GPX is still a powerful tool. It's still very, very important if you're looking at sequential adventure labs and want to get those into your cachetur plan.
Yep.
So this is not a note to say stop using lab to GPX, right? It's great. This is just a video to say, you know what? There might be an easier way for you to plan a trip with your adventure labs in cachetur.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get to that.
Carry on.
Now, it's been almost 2 years since the last time I did one of these videos. So please forgive me while I figure out how to share. I think I need to say present.
Bear with us. This is our first of the the cold season for Cache Canada to do. We haven't done one of these in a year, I think, or more. So
select window or screen.
We won't put any pressure on them. We'll say hello to some more people. Paul Harris, hello. Andrea Meeks, welcome. Oh. And Andrea and Corleva. Michelle Archibald, awesome. Yeah, he says, DougyB, what's up?
Well, hello, Paul. Paul's caching name is Nick John.
Mm-hmm.
It's good to hear from you, Paul. All right, so am I sharing?
No. Maybe. Oh, wait a minute. There. Now you are. I think I had to do something. I wasn't paying attention.
Okay, so I look away so that I can see the studio, and yes, I can see that we're sharing. I can see Dave. I can see me. I'm going to look back to my screen.
And I'm going to bring that up as a solo, so they won't see us. They don't need to see us.
So everyone, forgive me if I'm not looking straight at you as I consult my notes.
There we
go. I have two screens here.
It's full screen now, so that makes it better for the viewers to see.
Great. So just to recap, what we're going to do is we're going to create a cachetur trip. Today we're just going to show adventure labs, but of course you could add other caches. Please go back and watch some of the other videos we did on how to add virtuals and webcams and traditionals and all the other cache types. But today we're going to focus on adventure labs, and because it's a cachetur feature, we're going to focus specifically on non-sequential adventure labs. All right, I'll show you if I can find a sequential adventure lab that and how that works and what the limitations are. But we're going to focus on non-sequential adventure labs.
Okay.
We'll get to sequential at the end. So go back and get my notes. I think today what we're going to do is a road trip around Kitchener. So what I've done is I've gone ahead and opened up my Google Maps. Mm-hmm. So there's Kitchener, all right? And we're going to look at some adventure labs around Kitchener. So to do that, in cachetur, I'm going to go to my trip menu, and I'm going to create a new trip. Okay. When I create my trips, I like to put the date in the title so that I have reference to it. And we're going to create a trip for February 1st in Kitchener. It's going to be a car trip.
Carol says her next caching trip is in Kitchener next week.
Well, Carol, then this is the video for you. All right. So we're just going to go through the basics of creating a cachetur trip. We don't need to worry about the time right now because we're going to leave it in draft mode. All right.
I always wondered about that. Like, can you just say all day if you're not sure, or does it matter what you do with it?
you know, the time here is really informational.
Yeah.
When we get into the actual trip, I'll show you a little trick that I use to figure out my start time and my stop times.
Okay. Because sometimes I
Which,
wonder, like, well, how late am I going to go? Or I don't know what time I'm going to
yeah.
start. Or...
So remind me if I forget to show you guys how to do that.
Okay.
It's using a feature called ETA. All right. So we're going to save this trip. We've now created a new trip. All right. So we're in an empty trip. You see there's no waypoints, there's no comments, there's no map. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to add some waypoints. Now in cachetur, if you open up the waypoint menu, you'll see down here, there's a new menu item called Import Lab Caches.
Oh.
Oh.
I had not noticed that.
There you go. So let's click on that. And it brings up this new prompt. Now, I apologize to our viewers. I am old and my eyes aren't great, so I've really got magnification turned up on my screen. So not everything fits on the screen at once. I'll scroll around so that everybody can see. But this is the screen. And you can see in here that there's a section for coordinates, and then there's a button that says search for lab caches. So basically, you need to tell it where you want to search for lab caches. And that's why I had Google Maps open. So we said that we're going to look for caches in Kitchener. So go into Google Maps, and I'm going to right-click anywhere in Kitchener, and there's the coordinates for where I right-clicked. Now I left-click on that, and it copies it to the clipboard.
Yep.
So now I've got the coordinates for Kitchener. I go in here, and I paste those coordinates into the cachetur coordinates box. I click search for lab caches and watch this magic. It does take a little bit of time, all right, because it's going off and loading all the Adventure Lab data. Now here are all the Adventure Labs within a large radius of Kitchener. I apologize to everyone for all the smileys. I've done a lot of Adventure Labs in Ontario.
I think most of the current viewers that are on with us live know about your adventures. But for anybody watching that's not live, DougyB does a lot of adventure labbing.
I do. So the smileys are obviously Adventure Labs that I've found, and the green Adventure Lab dots are Adventure Labs that I have not yet found. Now note, these are adventures. These are not locations of adventures, all right? But this is a very valuable feature because if I was looking to do a day in Kitchener, I may not want to do Adventure Labs that I've already done. So the smileys help me in filtering out what I do and do not want to do.
Yep.
But for the purposes of this exercise, let's choose a few. So here's one that's out at the airport. You can see the airport out here. I've already done it, but that's okay. Let's click on that. So when we click on that, it brings up information about the Adventure Lab. It's the Region of Waterloo International Airport. That's the name of the lab. It tells us the average rating of the lab is 4.6. And it shows us one of the images from the Adventure Lab. And it says that we can import the stages to our trip. So let's do that.
Wow.
We click on that. It goes off and it does some work and it comes back. Now it's stopped. So let's go back by scrolling back up here and clicking on this arrow. We'll go back to our trip plan and we'll see, wow, all of those Adventure Lab locations are now in our trip.
That's amazing.
I did a lot of talking.
Yeah.
That took a lot longer than it would if you were just doing it on your own. So we've gone in and we've created a trip plan for one Adventure Lab.
Wow.
And we've got all 5 of the locations, and here they are in the map, right? Now, one thing to note, or a thing to note, is that when we did this, it created all the locations. But notice this dotted or dashed line here, right? Does everybody see that between waypoint 1 and waypoint 2? There's a dashed line.
Yep.
All the others have a solid line.
Yep.
In cachetur, that denotes where the next set of waypoints will be inserted. So if we were to go and add a geocache or add more adventure labs, they would be inserted between waypoint 1 and 2.
You wouldn't want that to happen.
Well, you may or you may not.
Yeah, it depends. Yes. Yeah.
The important thing is to know that that's what this feature does when you do a waypoint import from lab caches. It adds this dash line, this insert point, after the first location that it imported. So when I'm adding multiple adventure labs, just to keep it clean, I'll add one adventure lab and then I'll come back to this screen. I'll make sure everything came in okay. And then I just double click on that dash line and it changes to a solid line. When all the lines are solid, it means that the next insertion point is at the end of your list.
Oh, okay. I was just going to ask you, can you move the dotted line?
Yes, you can.
Yes, you did.
Yes, you can go to another separator. Let's go here between waypoints 4 and 5, and you can double click, and it puts the dashed or dotted line in there.
Yeah. Okay.
So you can move that insertion point around, but when I'm importing the adventure labs, I like to import one set and then come back and check that they're in my waypoint list, remove that insertion point, and then go and insert another set. So let's go ahead and do that. Oh, sorry, waypoints, and we want to import lab caches. Now, the coordinates are still in my copy and paste buffer, so I'll just paste them back in. Search for lab caches. You do not have control over the radius in which it searches. So if you're searching in an area that's got a lot of lab caches, it can take a few seconds for it to come back. Okay, so let's scroll back into Kitchener. Now, I just want to get this on the screen so everybody can see it. So a few things. One, we could go and we could select other adventure labs, but I wanted to point something out. Can everybody see where I'm circling the cursor here, almost in the middle of the screen?
Yep.
Here we go. That's the airport. And the adventure lab that we just imported was at the airport. So if you've got some adventure labs in your waypoint list and you go to search for more lab caches, it doesn't show you the icon for the one that you've already imported.
Right, it's gone.
Right, that just sort of declutters the screen, so you no longer have to worry about that one. That's now in your plan.
Yep.
So it's gone. All right.
There is a bit of a blob. I don't know if that's a shadow or.
Well, that's an artifact on the map. So what that is when we imported all those locations into our trip plan.
Yeah.
Cachetur, being the amazing tool that it is, started creating a route.
A route. Okay.
So
that's the route line.
That's the route line.
Okay.
For our trip. All right. So that's a good point, Dave. Cachetur in this little screen for lab caches gives you a lot of information. So let's pick another adventure lab to import. This is a good one. I happen to know this one. This one goes around the area of Kitchener and Waterloo, Ontario. So it's not all clustered in one area. There's several locations that are spread out. So again, we just clicked on the icon. It tells us the name of the adventure lab. It tells us the rating, and we can say import those stages to the trip. Now remember, I turned off the insertion point, so it should be importing these stages right to the end of our waypoint list.
Yep.
So I click on that. It's done. We scroll back up here, and we click the arrow to return to the trip. Now, we go down here, and look. There are the next 5 locations for our trip. And again, after the first location, it made the insertion point for the next insertion. Right, so I'm going to turn that off.
Double click on it. Yep.
Yeah, double click on it. And we can see now that we've got 10 trips, or 10 locations, excuse me. And as you can see, these cover quite an area. Right, so here are the first 5 locations that we did.
Yep.
And then we can see that location 6 over here, location 7 near the top, location 8 off towards the right, location 9 down in the southeast, and location 10 kind of in the central. So I'm not going to go into how to create a route. We have videos already that tell you how to do routes with cachetur and how to optimize those routes and how to sort your waypoints out. So I'm not
Yep.
going to get into that today. This is really about the ease with which you can now pull in Adventure Lab locations into cachetur, right? So we've been talking probably about 15 minutes on this, but in reality, if you're familiar with this feature, this would have taken you less than 3 minutes to pull into Adventure Labs,
Right. Yep.
right? I mean, so that's a fantastic feature, and I think I think I'm going to pause here and see if there's any questions.
We have one question, and it's a good one. I've already thought about it, and it's a good place to bring it up right now.
Okay.
So Wet Coaster asked, do things get messed up if you add 2 Adventure Labs at the same time before going back to the trip?
Yeah, that's a great question. So let's do that. Let's delete what we've done. So let's go in and delete all the waypoints. All right. So I will just say delete. Okay. So we've got a clean trip, no waypoints. And then let's go back into waypoints and import from lab caches. And let's import the same 2. So we'll give it those same coordinates.
Mm-hmm.
We'll let it do its tricks.
That didn't take long at all.
Scroll into the Kitchener area. And the 2 that we selected was the one at the airport. So we'll import those stages. And before going back to the trip, I think this was the other one we did. No, not this one.
That one, yep. No.
Where did it go? Nope.
We lost it.
Now I can't find it. You know what? It doesn't really matter.
It doesn't matter.
Let's pick this one. This one
Okay.
This one also goes over quite an area. So this is the 5-city brewery tour, but it's the same concept. So to back up, we're answering Gary's question about what would happen if we imported more than one Adventure Lab without going back to the trip. Does it mess things up? So the answer is, it depends. It depends on your point of view. It depends on what you're doing with your trip plan. But I'm going to show you what happens. So we imported those stages to the trip. We've now done 2 Adventure Labs. Let's go back into our plan. So here we can see that the very first waypoint is from the region of Waterloo International Airport, which was the first Adventure Lab we selected, and it's the first location. But now you can see that the second waypoint is from 5-city brewery tour. It's at Jackass Brewing.
Yep.
Right? And then the third one is 5-city brewery, and the 4th and the 5th and the 6th, they're all 5-city brewing before it goes back to region of Waterloo. So again, remember that the first time we imported from the region of Waterloo International Airport, inside the trip, an insertion point was created between the first and the second waypoints. The second time we did an import without coming back to the trip for the 5-city brewery tour, it inserted them between waypoints 1 and 2. So it pushed 2 down to 7. And it now created a new insertion point between 2 and 3. So if you
added a third, if you added a third one, then it would be inserted there.
It would be inserted there. And then if you added a 4th one, it would be inserted after the first location of the 3rd one, and so on and so on.
So you want to add them one at a time and take out that dotted line.
So this is where the depends answer comes in.
Okay.
When I'm creating a plan and I have it in my head as to kind of how I want to do it, then I do exactly as you say. I import one Adventure Lab into the trip. I go back to the trip. I remove the insertion point, and then I repeat. Import another Adventure Lab, go back to the trip, remove the insertion point. That way, logically, I can then follow it along in my trip plan and go, oh, okay, these are the ones that I did in the order that I did. Alternately, if I know that I'm importing a whole bunch of non-sequentials and they're all over the place, and I'm going to use Cachetur's waypoint optimization, then I don't care. I just click import, 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 import. I'll
And
come back to the trip, and you can see that these waypoints are kind of all over the place. Well, then I just go into waypoint, sort prioritize waypoint. This is from one of our other videos, so I'm going to go quickly. I toggle the marked.
and Wet Coaster was already on it with a
Yeah,
comment saying if you're going to create your route after all the insertions, it won't really matter.
right,
Right. Very
right.
good.
So
Very good,
that's
Gary.
exactly it, Gary. I've used the optimization tool, and it's now come back and it's optimized them all for me, and it's created a trip plan and a route. So um, that's why I said it really it depends on what you're doing. I tend to do the first way more than others. I tend to import an Adventure Lab, go back, just check and make sure everything is right before I import a second Adventure Lab.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's been a couple of times where I've done it the other way and gone and imported, 5 or 10 or 20 Adventure Labs, and they're all in this funky order, but something wasn't quite right. Like maybe I imported the wrong Adventure Lab, or I imported one that was sequential by mistake and it's only a single location. We'll get to that in a minute. So if you're only importing a few Adventure Labs and you're going to let the system prioritize it for you, you don't need to worry about going back and removing that insertion point. Just go and import them all and then let cachetur do your waypoint optimization.
Hmm.
But if you have a whole bunch of Adventure Labs that you're putting into a trip, like perhaps you're looking at a multi-day trip, I do recommend that you do it one Adventure Lab at a time and change that insertion point just to make sure that when you're importing it, you've got the right Adventure Lab, nothing weird and wonderful has happened, that it's meeting your expectations, it's going in the order you want. You can still use the optimization tool later, right?
Hmm.
You can use that tool anytime.
Now, you did say, I think earlier, that this doesn't work for sequential.
Right.
So what do you
So,
do? What do you do if you have one?
so let's see what happens with sequential. I'm going to delete
Mm-hmm.
all these waypoints again. So I'm going to create a brand new um, empty trip. All right. Okay. Oh, I got to select them all. Silly me.
Been there,
Okay.
done that.
Yep. So now we've got a new trip. Now, I don't remember which Adventure Labs in Kitchener are sequential, but I do know of an Adventure Lab in Brampton that is sequential. So I'm going to come over to Brampton. I'm going to get some new coordinates from Brampton. Sure I am.
Wet Coaster says, if it's sequential, boycott the CO. That's funny. You're not going to do my Adventure Lab in Kelowna
We're,
Airport. It's sequential.
we are going to do, you and I, Dave, are going to
Yep.
do um, a session one day, a stream one day on sequential Adventure Labs and their place in the world.
Awesome. I look forward to it. That needs
Yeah.
to happen.
Yeah, I agree.
But
Okay,
yeah,
so
they when they happen, there has to be a reason, and
agreed.
not just to
There,
entertain the CO.
right. There are perfectly valid sequential Adventure Labs, and there are Adventure Labs that are sequential that should not be.
Yeah.
But we'll save that for another video. All right.
Okay.
So we've got our coordinates for Brampton. We're going to go into waypoints and import lab caches. We're going to put the coordinates for Brampton in. This might take a little bit longer because there's a lot more Adventure Labs around here, but we'll see.
Not too long at all.
Okay. Come on, Brampton, here we go. So which one do I want? I think it's this one. Yep, Brampton's passed. So interestingly, it doesn't tell you if it's sequential, right? So that's something to keep in mind. You don't know if it's sequential, but we can import the stages to the trip. We go back to the trip, and this is where you'll find out that it's sequential. Oh, it's not sequential.
Oh,
I picked the wrong one. I picked the wrong one. Oh my goodness.
That's okay.
You know why this is embarrassing? Because I'm
Not
the
at
cache
all.
owner. I'm the cache owner.
Oh.
That's not the one I wanted. That's okay. Trips. Waypoints. Import lab caches. We'll do this again. The adventure I wanted is on the other side of Queen Street, so we'll pick it up. Senior moment, yeah. I'll accept that. Here we go. There's a lot of adventure labs in downtown Brampton. There we go, Ken Williams Square. All right, we've imported that one. We'll go back to our trip. There we go. So it comes up with only one location.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Now, I'm going to leave this here so that we can do a contrast and compare. And I'm now going to go to lab to GPX. So this is where you would use lab to GPX when you're dealing with sequential adventure labs. So let me just make that a little bit bigger.
And notice he had that ready to go.
I did. So I put my coordinates in for lab to GPX. All right. So it will go to that area. I'm going to leave the radius in kilometers at 15. I don't care about that. We want lab caches. We're going to preference
sequential
LC, and we are going to use a brace L brace in the title for adventure labs, and we're going to turn all of these on, and we're going to go down here and say that we want the cache tour bulk add waypoints, and away we go. So this is a bit of a refresher. So it's downloaded it. I'm going to open up my download folder. It's going to be right here, and I'm going to open this with Notepad. So for those of you who've watched the videos, this is what the output from Lab to GPX looks like. And we have to find Ken Williams Square, so there it is. So here's all the entries for Ken Williams Square. So we're going to grab this out of the Lab to GPX output because that's the only one that we want. So I'm going to copy it.
You're grabbing the 4 that you don't have.
The 5. I'm grabbing all 5 locations.
Oh, okay.
And I'll show you why.
Okay.
So we've grabbed all 5 locations. I'm highlighted them. I'm doing a Control-C to copy. I will go back into our browser, go in here, waypoints. Now again, the way that we bring in Lab to GPX data formatted for cachetur is we do a bulk add waypoints. And we simply paste all of those waypoints into the bulk add screen. We click add. So now they're in our trip. So here's what we're going to compare and contrast. When we did the cache tour waypoint add lab caches, it brought in only one location of the sequential. You'll see here that the information in this first field is a little bit different. In the first field, it tells us the name of the location and in brackets, the name of the adventure. Down here, you can see all 5 entries from Lab to GPX. Lab to GPX provides a unique identifier in this first field. The name of the adventure is over here in the description field, and the name of the location is over here in the description field. And then there's an indicator that we told it to use, an L inside 2 braces, that indicate it's a linear or sequential adventure lab. So those are a couple of differences. The other difference is you'll see here when cachetur brings in the locations for adventure labs, in the description field, it adds a URL, and that's the actual URL for the adventure lab. And if you're using the cachetur app on your phone, when you go and look at this location in the cachetur app and you click on this, it will launch the adventure inside the Adventure Lab app. Lab to GPX does not bring that information in. So compare and contrast. For sequential adventure labs, the limitation in cachetur is that we'll only bring in one location, the very first location. All right. The limitation in Lab to GPX is that it won't bring in this link, right? So if the link is important to you, Lab to GPX won't bring it in. But you guys can see that we actually have it here on the screen, right?
So you already have the information from the first one. Why did you bring in the first one again?
To show the difference between how the information is presented,
just between the first and the first.
Right. Okay. You can see by the coordinates that they're exactly the same here, right? The same coordinates, but you've got all of this difference between formatting, if you will.
So normally you wouldn't do that. Normally you would just take the 4 you're missing.
So there's a couple of ways you can do it. You could do the 4 that you're missing, but you'd have to remember in your mind as you're doing them that there's a shift in nomenclature, a shift in how things are labeled between the first location and the others.
Okay.
Right? Or you don't need to bring in the first location from cachetur at all. If you know that the Adventure Lab is sequential, you could just bring it in directly from Lab to GPX.
Lab GPX, okay. Yep.
But here's why you might want to do both. So you see that we've got this first location and it's got this link. This link to me, for me personally, is really important. I use this link all the time when I'm in the field with the cachetur app on my phone. So over here, there's a little button that pops up. You see this little piece of paper with a pen. That's the edit button. I can go in and edit these comments. So I can highlight that link and I can copy it. And then I can go in and edit these other fields and I can paste it in.
Well, that's neat.
Right? So now I've got the link. And if I was really thinking ahead, I would have got this link first. And then when I did my bulk import, I would have pasted it in that screen real quickly for each of the 5 lines. And it would have brought it in right away.
Yeah.
But the point is, I'm now bringing in this link. So that took all of 30 seconds, and I've now got the link, and I can go ahead and delete this waypoint. Oh, sorry, not there. Waypoint. Delete waypoints. So I'm going to delete the one that we brought in from cachetur. And now this is a straight Lab to GPX import, but I've embellished it with information that cachetur gave us.
Nice.
All right. So Gary, I hope that answers your question. I'm not watching the YouTube chat, so I can't
Yeah.
see.
We have no. Anybody else have any other questions? Let us know, and we can pull them up. And that's a. I'm gonna try that tomorrow. I'm gonna try that feature tomorrow. So
Okay.
yeah, that's pretty cool.
And for anybody watching the video or anybody watching the video in the future, go back, watch the video, look at it, do it again. It becomes kind of second nature after the first few times you've done it,
Mm-hmm.
right? You just need to remember that when you're using cachetur to import the Adventure Lab, which is really simple and straightforward, it works fantastic as
Yep.
long as it's non-sequential. If you're
And I
going
had.
sequential, go ahead.
Sorry. Go ahead. No.
No,
Go ahead.
please.
I was just saying I had a lot of people on the cruise that we just came back from comment on watching the cachetur videos, going back and, I needed to refresh this. They could just go back to the video and pick out the piece they want and watch that, and gives a nice refresher.
So let me just check my notes. I think there was one other thing that I was
So
going
Carol
to show you.
says she's never used cachetur, so she has a lot to learn, and there are a lot of videos for you to reference.
I think Carol should invite me up to her place, bake some cookies, and then we'll have a one-on-one session.
That sounds good. There you go. A personal invitation. He's inviting himself.
When the weather's nicer, I'm not coming up there in the winter.
Yeah. Wet Coaster says green words, and I use cachetur a lot for our caching. Nice.
I'm glad, actually. I love cachetur, and by the way, there was a shout out at the beginning to cachetur. I'd like to shout out to cachetur as well. Cachetur costs money. The guys that run it, they need to host it. They need to pay their bills. Yep. You can help cachetur. You can join up, and you can help it keep free from ads and free from membership fees from everybody. It doesn't take a lot. I've done it a couple of times. Please consider supporting cachetur in any way that you can. It's a fantastic tool. I don't want to see it go away, but it does take money to keep it running.
Yeah, good idea. And Carol says the doors are always open, but they have lots of snow up there. And I remember going up to the geocaching capital of Canada in March with the KBK crew. We had some time together, and we said, let's go up there. And they wrote back to me and said, you do realize we get snow? And I said, well, yeah, I know. It's not like I'm not. I grew up in the Fort Erie area, which gets blasted, not quite as bad as Buffalo, but I know what deep snow is like. And I said, well, how bad could it be? Well, when we got there, oh my gosh, it took us a half an hour to go to a cache that was like 20 feet away.
Wow. So, Dave, I have a suggestion. There was one other thing that I wanted to show you, which was how to set the start time and then show you your end time.
Right.
But to do that, we need a trip. So here's my idea. Either you or some of our watchers, pick a place. Doesn't matter the place. Pick a place, a town, a city, and we'll open that up on Google Maps. We'll get the coordinates, and then we'll bring in 4 or 5 Adventure Labs into a trip, and I'll show you how to set the start time and then see what the stop time is.
Okay. Right. While we're waiting for somebody to comment, I have a place in mind, but we'll let somebody in the audience choose. Andrea Meeks says, I will try to push past my issue of seeming to have an error in certain lines of my Lab2 GPX file. When I posted to cachetur, these are new features, seem cool, and excited to try it for our next trip.
Excellent, Andrea. I'm glad you're going to give this a try. With respect to the errors that you're seeing, I don't know what they are, but I do have a thought because I've seen this myself a couple of times. Sometimes I have an extra blank line at the end of my bulk waypoint list. If you delete that blank line, so make sure there's no blank line, that often gets rid of the errors.
Yeah, we had that in one of our videos once, and I had that same issue, and I messaged you, and then as soon as I'm asking you, I remember, oh yeah, the blank line. Yeah.
Right. That may not be it, Andrea, but it was a thought.
So we have some suggestions. Uxbridge, Fredericton Mega Event, Appleton, Wisconsin, and oh, that was it. So those are three.
So I see. I am now looking at the YouTube chat. So Betty suggested Fredericton Mega. I'm not sure that there's an awful lot of adventure labs there right now. So why don't we pick either Appleton? I don't know where Appleton is, or Uxbridge. Appleton,
Let's go.
Wisconsin.
Let's go
Let's
with
go
Appleton,
Appleton, Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.
All right.
We're going to be going to Wisconsin at some point in the spring. I think. There's one geocache we want from the whole state. We're going there just for that one. So let's go there.
All right.
We might do adventure labs on the way, or while we're there, based on this.
I know I said this in my last video I did with you 2 years ago, that my computer was responding really slow. It's still responding really slow. I need to get a new computer. All right, Appleton, Wisconsin. Great, there we go. I right-clicked just anywhere on the map. Yep. There's my coordinates. I'm gonna pull those in. They're copied to the clipboard. We're gonna go in first because I'm a little bit anal. We're gonna edit the trip information. We're no longer going to Kitchener. We're going to Appleton, Wisconsin. So that's a different time zone, right? Do they have Milwaukee on here? Yep. Oh, that'd be the Chicago time zone.
Right? Yes.
Chicago.
Paul says he's heading to Wisconsin tomorrow.
I know why he's heading to Wisconsin too. And it's not curling. Paul and his family are big into curling.
Just going snowshoeing. There's lots of snow in Wisconsin.
That's true. Okay, so we've updated our time zone. Okay, and we have our waypoint. So let's go in. We have our coordinates. Let's go in and import lab caches. And I'm just going to do this willy-nilly. So let's go in and find lab caches in the area. I have not done any, so apparently I need to go to Appleton as well. Let's just zoom in so I can see Appleton on the screen.
Oh, I didn't know that's where that was. Huh.
Now, let's plan to clear out Appleton. And I'm just going to import them all. So we're going to do the wet coaster method of just sucking them all in without going back in to the trip. There's one. I'm just going to go sort of counterclockwise. There's two. I have no idea if these are sequential or non-sequential.
Mm-hmm.
There's three.
Oh, that looks fun.
Four. I mean, these could be all over the state for all I know. But that's part of the fun, right? Just bring them in, see where they are. Okay, so we've got 5. Let's go back in here. So you can now see that it kept moving that insertion point down. So we've got the first adventure, the second adventure, the third adventure, the fourth adventure, the fifth adventure, and then the fifth, the fifth, the fifth, the fifth, the fourth, the fourth, the fourth, the fourth, etc. But let's take a look at our map. So that took, like 15-20 seconds to import them all. Great.
Yep.
Let's take a look at our map. Okay, they're all over the place. Let's create a starting point. So let's look for hotels here. I'm sure there's hotels here.
Yeah, it's cold this time of year. You can't just park on the side of the road.
So, well,
you could.
Good. There's a Howard Johnson. Let's just get the coordinates for that Howard Johnson. Great. We'll go back into our trip plan. I'm going to just move my insertion point here for a minute. I'm going to add a waypoint. My waypoint is going to be lodging. This was a Howard Johnson in Appleton, Wisconsin, and there was my coordinates. Okay, so I put it in there just so that I didn't have to futz around. I've removed that insertion point, and now what I'm doing is I'm getting this little diamond, and I'm going to grab my Howard Johnson, put it up at the top, and I'm going to save my sorting. And then I'm going to refresh so it renumbers them. So now I've got a starting point. That's where we're starting for the day. I'm going to clone that so it becomes our ending point. So there's clone waypoint.
Remember, folks, you can watch this all again. When you're like, hey, I'm going to try that, and then you can't remember, boom, right
Watch
here.
it again. So
Watch it again.
there's my endpoint, right, is the Howard Johnson Hotel, right? And then we've got everything in the middle, and it's totally unsorted. So there's our start and end point, and then there's all these other locations. I'm going to use the power of sort and prioritize. So I mark them all, so you can see they're all marked, right? If there was some that I didn't want to prioritize, I could unmark them. I go down here and say that I'm doing this by car, calculate and sort an optimal route or route, and we can see that it's now done that.
Wow.
Right? Save that. So look, in less than 5 minutes,
That looks
I
so
decided
cool.
where I wanted to do. I picked 5 adventure labs, and I've got a trip location or a trip plan. And in a few minutes, it'll calculate a route, but we'll force that. But here's the thing that I wanted to show Dave. So Dave's like, well, if I want to start at this time, how do I know when I'm going to end?
Right.
Here's what you do. You click on this little edit button at your very first location, and you go down to the ETA override. Now, Dave, what time would you like to leave the hotel?
7:30.
0730. It's a 24-hour format. So you just put 0730 in your ETA, and it adds it up here. You can't see it yet, but it has added it. Let's do a refresh. So it's added it. Now, we're not done. Don't look at these other times. They're not correct. We now need to tell it to order a new route calculation. So we clicked on trip, order a new route calculation. And if you remember the old videos, this can take a minute or two, depending on how busy cachetur is.
Yep.
So it's a good time for a sip of Diet Pepsi. And I'll just refresh my screen to see if it's finished. It has not. Refresh it again to see if it's finished. It has not. It has reminded me about the membership, about the supporting cachetur. There we go. I can see up here I've got the notification, little orange ball.
Yep.
And it says the calculation of route is completed. Fantastic. So we'll mark that as red. Okay, so let's just do one more refresh. Okay, so now, Dave, if you notice, it started at 7:30. It now says that the next location we're going to go to is at 7:36. And the one after that is 7:41, 7:47, and so on. Inside cachetur, and I'm not going to get into this today, but inside cachetur, there's a default sort of wait time at each location, depending on what kind of location it is. You can override that, but there's a default, and it knows the route. It knows how long it takes at road speed to get from point A to point B based on the route. So if you give it a start time and you ask for it to give you an updated route, it will come through and tell you that in order to complete this, if we leave at 7:30 in the morning, we're going to be finished at 10:35 in the morning.
Wow. Time for lunch.
Pretty much. Or
we could sleep in.
I was going to say you could either sleep in or you could do this, and then if you're a senior like I'm almost a senior, it'd be time for a nap.
Well, Karen's an early riser, so there'll be no sleeping in.
Well, then you get to drop Karen off at the local arts and crafts show or museum or whatever, and you can have a nap.
Yeah.
All right. But the point is this. two things. So you can see within a matter of minutes, we created a trip plan for 5 adventure labs in a place that we've never been to.
Mm-hmm.
We added our hotel. We had Cachetur optimize it. We went up and added a start time. And we know that Cachetur is telling us we're going to be finished at 10:35. Now, Cachetur is really generous with its estimates, I find. I don't know if it's I drive faster than Cachetur or I find Adventure Labs faster than Cachetur, but I find that usually I'm ahead of the Cachetur plan. So if I've got an 8-hour plan, I'm usually
Mm-hmm.
finishing half an hour to an hour sooner than Cachetur.
Huh.
Thanks, right? But it's a good thumbnail. It's a good yardstick
Yeah.
to understand how long a trip might take.
So you could plan this little 5 Adventure Lab tour to start at 9 o'clock. You'd be done at 11:30. The brewery will just be opening, and you could put that in at the end, find out where you're going to go, and then create another 5 or 10 10 labs, add that, but starting at the brewery, and you'll be done by dinner.
So we put in 9 o'clock. It said that we would be back at the hotel by noon, which is great. So let's just kind of zoom in here a little bit. See if we can find a brewery.
Type in brew pub. That's my go-to.
Is that your go-to?
That's my go-to. And that started in Houston, Texas, when we went down. Was it? No, it was before the mega. Karen and I went for a geocaching vacation. We had 3 locations. One was the Alamo. One was the Lexington Aircraft Carrier Museum. And the other was Galveston for webcams. And when we got back to Houston, we were doing a little geocaching. And she says, "Oh, we should go for a beer." So I just typed in. No, actually, I typed in beer, but I've since went to brew pubs, and I found this lovely brewery to go right in downtown Houston. It was awesome. But yeah, since then I just type in brew pub because that gives you a brewery with food usually.
So I found a brewery called Hop Yard Ale Works on the map. I've got its coordinates. Perfect. Let's go in here. We'll create an insertion point. So we want to go to the brewery before we go to the hotel. We're going to tell it to add a waypoint. And this is a food or rest stop. Hop Pub Brewer, I think it was called. Coordinates. Great. All right. Now, here's the most important question, Dave.
How long are we going to stay there?
How long are you going to stay there?
An hour.
An hour?
Yeah.
Cachetur can help you. So remember that field called ETA? Right over top of that is the stop time override in seconds. So if you're going to be there an hour, how many seconds is in 1 hour?
Oh, geez.
So there's 60 seconds in a minute and 60 minutes in an hour. So 60 times 60
is 3,600.
3,600. So we've now added 3,600 in there. We need to order a new route calculation, and we need to give it a minute or so for the route calculation to work.
I'm getting verification that it's 3,600. Math is not my strong point.
All right. So here we go. It's done. When I'm doing this on my own at home, I really don't usually wait while it's recalculating. I'm doing other things.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just clear that.
Multitasking.
Mm-hmm. So we come back down here. We said, okay, it now knows we're going to be there at 12:10. We asked it to give us 3,600, and then it's going to say, okay, great. If you stay there for an hour, then you're going to be at the Howard Johnson at 1:21. And we can go down here and see that the brew pub is here, and the Howard Johnson is here.
Wow, cool.
So, in the matter of 10 or 15 minutes, you know, we've I don't know who it was that wanted to go to Appleton, but we've just created a trip plan for you.
There you go. Now they've got it right there.
Now, now, whoever this is, I presume that you like other kinds of geocaches too. So, go back and watch the other videos on how to add geocaches to a cache tour trip plan, and how to use that special overlay feature where you could bring the cache tour trip up in geocaching map or in Project GC map, so that you can actually add caches directly from those maps into your cache tour trip plan. Not going to go through that here, but we do have videos on that.
Yep, we do.
I believe that one was called The Whole Kit and Caboodle.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have any other? Oh, so Wet Coaster says all vacations are geocaching vacations. It's funny. This one actually was specific. Well, no, it wasn't, because it was three. There were three touristy things I wanted to see, but then we based the geocaching around those three things. So. So Carol says when she's in Kitchener area next week, I plan on doing a few library adventure labs, but they open at different times, so it will be a bit complicated to plan the route because of the times.
So Carol, go back and take a look at what we just did about the ETA override, which is when you want to be somewhere, right? And the stop time, which is how long you think you're going to be there. So if you take a look, and I know some of those Kitchener libraries, Kitchener Waterloo libraries have some really weird days and times, but if you know that they're going to be open from 10 till 5, you can go in and say, all right, then I want to do this adventure lab first. I'm going to set the ETA override to 10 a.m. as soon as it opens. I figure I'm going to be there an hour. So I'm gonna make that stop time 3,600 seconds, and you can put that right into your trip plan, right, and create your route.
Yep.
And then you can go and add the second library adventure lab, and if you have it update your route, it'll now tell you when you'll arrive. You can go, okay, great, that's still within the opening times. Now let's add another hour for stop time. So you could do this incrementally, right? Do one, then do the next one, then do the next one. And you would be able to very easily plan those Kitchener Waterloo Library Adventure Labs. The only thing I'm going to throw out there, Carol, is you should throw in some extra time for the bonus finals, because when you finish doing the Adventure Lab, all those Kitchener Waterloo Library Adventure Labs, they have bonus finals. So you'll not receive the coordinates for the bonus final until you finish the adventure lab, and you won't know where it is in your trip. You'll just have to put a little bit of a placeholder and accommodate some extra time, so that when you finish the adventure lab, you can go and find the bonus and then move on to the next adventure lab.
There you go. Awesome. Very cool. We haven't got any more questions, so I think we must have explained it all.
So that was all I had on my agenda to talk about. I'm going to recap it just a little bit, so that everybody knows. So again, the videos that we did in the past, some things have changed. So those very onerous mechanisms for finding locations using Google Maps and the application are still valid, but they're not necessary. The Lab to GPX tool is still there. It's still a very valuable tool. It's still a tool that you will find yourself using, but just be aware that you can no longer get the journal entry information. So that limits your ability to determine where bonus finals are in many cases. But the primary thing that we wanted to learn about today was how to use cachetur to add adventure labs to a trip plan. And it's very straightforward. You create your trip, you give it some coordinates as to where you want to import the adventure lab from, and you just import the adventure labs you want. Just remember about that insertion point. So it can work for you, it can work against you. Just be aware of it. If you know about it, you can choose to remove it, you can choose to move it, you can choose to ignore it, and then you can use the cachetur waypoint optimization to make everything flow, right?
Yep.
Keep in mind the limit of cachetur's import from lab cache. For sequential adventure labs, it'll only import the first location, but we showed you how you can bring that in from lab to GPX. And very importantly, we showed you the differences in how the information is tagged when it's brought in. So you're aware, you understand, you have all the tools you need to be able to create a very successful trip plan, not only for adventure labs but for other geocaching and other touristy type things too.
Hmm.
So that was all I had for today.
Cool. Awesome. Well, we have, wait. Oh, there we go. Wet Coaster gives a comment. Instead of Google Maps, you could just pick a geocache in the area you are going to and insert that latitude, longitude in your Adventure Lab screen cache tour.
Correct. Yeah, Gary, that's absolutely correct. As long as you get the coordinates, it doesn't matter how you get the coordinates. As long as you get the coordinates into cachetur to be the center of where you want it to look for Adventure Labs, doesn't matter what tool you use to bring them in.
Correct. Okay. Okay. Wait a minute. I'm going to share something. I think. Maybe not. Kick from. Oh no! I don't want to do that. Where do I say share? I can't see the share. I want to share something, but I don't see it.
It's present.
Oh, present. They changed it.
Yeah, they did.
Okay. I haven't used this in a while. Okay. What am I gonna do? Share a screen. There we go. Okay. I am going to share Wheel of Names. I'm going to just randomly select 3. And unless... Oh, wait a minute. No, I was going to do something else. Okay. I might do it for the last. If we can't think of things to ask, then this is what we're going to do. Okay, so the first, we'll give away the brand new Cache Canada trackable to the answer to this question. Cache Canada went out to Geo Woodstock and they were forced to vacate the area due to COVID. But rather than just drive home, we took advantage of that and created a series of 5 videos. Do you know the name of that series of 5 videos? It doesn't have to be exactly the same. Anything close will do. So whoever gets that question first. We didn't want to just drive home and ruin all the opportunity that presented itself along the way. So we did the best that we could under extremely difficult circumstances. And we created a series of videos documenting, there you go. Andrea Meeks, congratulations. I think, if Doug can confirm and everybody else, making lemonade out of lemons it was something like that. So I think, yeah, it was correct. So that's it. Great. Kathy, Laura, you've got it as well. And Carol Durant says what Andrea said. That's awesome. Yeah. Lemon from lemonades. That's what I try to do is like if you have something difficult in your life is try to change it into something good. Try not to dwell on the bad. So,
well, Dave, I was following you and Karen in real time on social media as you were doing that trip.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was electrifying. It really was.
Thank you. I had
That's a joke. That was a joke. That was a joke, Dave.
Electrifying because we were in a Tesla.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just finishing up being in an electric program. So, and I'm looking forward to going back. Apparently, I am in full retirement now. They don't want me back. When I cut the strings, that was it. I was done, and I'm perfectly happy with that because Karen and I are going to be extremely busy. So there you go. That was the first one, and we'll make sure that gets to Andrea. I think I have her address already. So it was awesome. I lived vicariously through both of you when you were on your trips out west. Well, thank you so much. Bringing up the first 2 videos from our cruise have been edited, and they are up on YouTube. They're not available yet. They will not be launched until, I think, February 7th is the first one, and actually it's Key West, so our little adventure to Key West. They will be coming out each Saturday all the way until, I think, April. We did go to 9 ports of call. We added countries we didn't have before. And on Wednesdays, there's a few 1 Minute Wednesdays. We're trying to get back into the swing of that. There is coming up on February the 8th an opportunity to chat with Cash Shadow. He'll be back on doing his little ask a question. You might get something vaguely familiar back in response that could be correct or similar or right or what have you. So now we need a... okay. In our summer adventures, we ventured off to a road trip somewhere in Canada on the east, and it was a very long trip. Can anybody tell, the first person that gets it, what province we visited, or part of province? I believe it was 5 videos, might be 7. I think. Not sure. Labrador. Happy Ho Dog. Awesome, you got it. Somebody's been watching. I'm glad. Thank you, Kathy Laura. You got it too. Labrador. So Happy Ho Dog. Congratulations. You will get... what did I have? I lost it all. We'll be sending you one of our Cache Canada original tags, and that was from IB Geocaching out in the East Coast, Quebec. Well, we did go through Quebec, yes, on our way to Labrador, but the main trip was Newfoundland and Labrador. We had contemplated going to the island of Newfoundland, but I hadn't planned it ahead because I didn't know when exactly I was retiring when we were planning that trip, so I didn't book a ferry ride across from the mainland to the island. And then by the time I figured it out, we would have had to sit there at the end of our road for 3 days before a ferry was coming, would be available. So we would have had to race through the island in order to get back onto the mainland and then race back because Karen was still working. Okay, Doug, you got a trivia question for us? Something to do with Cache Tour. Something
Trivia
you did today, maybe, that if people were listening, what they need to do.
All right.
Putting them on the spot, folks.
That's okay. If you want to manage how the Adventure Lab locations appear in your trip plan when you import them, what do you need to do in the trip plan?
Oh. What do you need to do in the trip plan to manage your trip?
To manage the order in which your Adventure Lab locations are imported. So if you remember...
I have routing.
Routing. Let's see what other answers we're getting.
Use the route optimizer.
Use the route optimizer. So this was more about when you're importing the Adventure Lab. So you go into waypoints and you say import from lab and you select the Adventure Lab. And then there was a question that was asked, what would happen if you just select another Adventure Lab?
Without doing something first.
Yeah, and we went back into the trip plan and we looked at where this thing was. What's that thing called?
What's the thing called?
It was a dashed line.
Oh, I just called it a dashed line.
Yeah.
You did have a name for it. Set the dashed line from Paul. He's looking for an insert line. No, he's looking for the actual term.
So let's go with Paul's answer. Set the dashed line. It's called the insertion point.
There we go. We got that from Rumman. Insert line.
Insert line. So I think Paul. I think we'll go with Paul. That would be my recommendation. Right. But again, yeah, everybody. So it's that insertion point. It's that dash line. Just remember that when you
Well, that was actually a Wet Coaster said remove the insert line. Prior to Paul.
Oh, he did. You're right. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Paul, I apologize, Paul. Next time you're here, give me a shout. We'll go for a Timmy's.
Just go to Wisconsin. Just don't put it out of your head. Don't let it bother you.
Oh, I do not
There you
want to
go,
go snowshoeing.
Gary.
Sorry,
We're going to send you.
Gary.
There you
Sorry
go.
about
That
that.
was that one right there.
So again, it's when you're importing those Adventure Lab locations, if you import more than one, remember that cachetur puts that insertion point after the first location
Oh,
of the first, and
Wet
then after
Coaster.
the first location second.
Wet Coaster says, "Go ahead and give it to Paul." Okay. Do you have his address, or Paul? You send Doug your address. Send me your address. I don't have Paul's address. There we go. That's very nice of you, Gary. Gary gets all kinds of stuff from Cache Canada already. There you go.
Very good.
Oh, you said Wet Coaster is all yours. No, I got to send it to somebody.
Yeah, it's gonna go to Paul.
It's going to go to Paul. We need
Paul.
your address, Paul. It's going
We
to
need
go
your
to
address, Paul. Yeah. So there you go. And
There you go.
and next time Dave's gonna tell me in advance about needing a trivia question.
Well, I had to think of two on my own.
You're
I'm
like
thinking,
trivia question. I'm like,
okay, crap. Holy doodle! You want one right now?
There you go.
There you go.
So, I just wanted to say thanks, Dave, for the opportunity to do these things. There's so many people out there that are into doing routes and trips and plans and leveraging geocaching for their recreational time. Cachetur is a tool that allows us all to not only optimize our trip and to have a great experience, but to have fun planning it as well.
Yep.
And the opportunity to get online with you and to share this with everybody is really fantastic. And it generates a lot of interest, not just now and in the moment, but throughout the time. I was at an event earlier today, and Betty Woods, who was online and might still be online, was at that event, and she told me that she's just started watching the videos that we prepared 2 years ago. So,
Nice.
oh, did you guys see Camo?
Yeah, she was.
Hey, buddy.
He, she.
My buddy Camo. Come on, buddy.
Yeah,
Come on up.
Camo was in there.
Here we go. There we
There
go.
we go.
There's Camo. That's my
Nice.
Australian cattle dog.
Ooh, that's a pretty. I never heard of that breed before. Very cool.
They're also called blue heelers.
Huh.
Yep, that's my buddy Camo. There you go.
Yeah. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. Great information. Thanks to both of you. Thank you for joining us. And anybody that's watching this after the fact, thanks so much for joining in. And don't forget to join us with Cache Shadow coming up on Wednesday, February the 8th. I don't have a 1 Minute Wednesday for that, so we're going to do a one reviewer hour or two with Cache Shadow. He's always is very entertaining, and we haven't had him on for a while. And we will have coming up from our cruise. We did an interview, or I asked Cache Shadow and Cache Drone together a series of questions related to geocaching and reviewing process. So that'll be coming up, and I think it might be an hour long interview process. So we tried to find the quietest place that we could on the ship. There's lots of noise on a cruise ship. If you are looking for quiet places, there aren't a lot of them. We ended up finding the chapel to be the best place, although there was some buzzing going on. So look forward to that. And we have all of our cache videos coming up. And I'm going to be working tomorrow, before the football game starts, on optimizing our caching adventure for Savannah, Georgia, for finding adventure labs in that city, because we're going to be spending at least 2 days, if not 3, in Savannah, Georgia, coming up next month, February. So we're planning a road trip, and that is one of the major destinations for our place. So I'm going to try that out, and I'll let you know how it goes. There you go. Thank you, everybody, so much for coming, and we're going to sign out now. We've been on for an hour and a half almost. So there you go.
Great.
Let me
Thanks,
see,
everyone.
Find the exit screen. Where's the exit screen? Do I have one? I don't know. Oh, there it is. Thank you.